Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Oh, the weather outside. My hair is quitting. My hair is giving up. So, anyways, back on Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Today is, well, for anyone that didn't watch yesterday, I am covering Suicide Prevention Month this week, Monday through Thursday. Friday will still be Aloha Oracle Friday. I think it'll be good to break up the heaviness of this subject. But yesterday I talked about Suicide Prevention Month. I think I called it week, but it's actually the month. But today I want to talk about risk factors of suicide. Now, in order to get this right, I looked it up. So I'm going to be reading to you, and it's from the National Institute of Mental Health. So, yeah, let's get rolling. So again, I'm just going to read this to you and then we'll go over, my thoughts and my perspective afterwards. So people of all genders, ages, and ethnicities can be at risk. Suicidal behavior is complex and there is no single cause. The main risk factors for suicide are depression, other mental disorders, or substance abuse disorder, chronic pain, which we're going to talk about later in the week, personal history of suicide attempts, family history of a mental disorder or substance abuse, family history of suicide, exposure to family violence, including physical or sexual abuse. We're going to talk about that later this week too. Presence of guns or other firearms in the home, having recently been released from prison or jail. Direct or indirect exposure to others' suicidal behavior, such as that of a family member's, peers, or celebrities, can increase for people with suicidal thoughts. Most people who have risk factors will not attempt suicide, and it is difficult to tell who will act on suicidal thoughts. Although risk factors for suicide are important to keep in mind, someone who is actively showing signs of suicide may be at higher risk for danger and in need of immediate attention. Stressful life events such as the loss of a loved one, legal troubles, or financial difficulties, and interpersonal stressors such as shame, harassment, bullying, discrimination, or relationship troubles may contribute to suicide risk, especially when they occur along with suicide risk factors. Family and friends are often the first to recognize the warning signs of suicide, and they can take the first step toward a loving one, find mental health treatment, and find helping. Sorry, my brain. Family and friends are often the first to recognize the warning signs of suicide, and they can take the first step toward helping a loved one, find mental health treatment. See, I got healing and helping, So, if you're not, so check this page if you're not sure where to start. Tomorrow, I am going to share the warning signs, but I figured the risk factors, even the warning signs on this list is listed first. I figured the risk factors to me seemed like it needed to come first because, a lot of times people just don't know. They'll think it just came out of nowhere. It's like, well, I didn't know. I didn't even know there was a problem. But, people who struggle with mental health issues, who struggle with depression, or maybe even bullying or harassment, a lot of times they internalize it because, depending on what era you're raised in, that this is what we're taught to do. We're taught to push it down, if we have the traditional minded person. There are some people who are able to think outside the box. I mean, the older sibling was in therapy at a time when therapy was, not at its finest and didn't have the rules and regulations it had on it. And, she was young, but there was a lot that had happened. There was a lot that went on in her life. And I mean, nothing, she had a great family and everything, but she does struggle with depression. So, and I'm sure there were other leading factors, and, I can talk to her about that and see if I'm allowed to share that story, but just know that, her being in touch with her mental health at such a young age is really what has, I think, helped and saved a lot of people around her. So, good morning, Eileen. So anyways, for anybody starting or anybody coming in early and wondering why, Shelly Marie, it's not 8:30 yet, for my live, older sibling and I totally forgot that this week her physical therapy appointments are early. And so it's like, I mean, you've never seen two people move so fast because, so anyways, I dropped her off and got her there on time, but because of that and because of the time and having to go pick her up, the perspective today and Thursday will be at varying times in the 8 o'clock hour. So on Thursday it'll probably start a little later because I think our therapy is at 8:30. Today was at 8, so I figured I got to start it now because I'll be honest with you, I want to go play with that dog. They have the therapy dog there on Tuesdays, and she is just super cute. So anyways, I know this is a tough subject. So there are ways of identifying people at risk for suicide. There's a universal screening. It says research has shown that a 3-question screening tool helps emergency room personnel identify adults at risk for suicide. Research has found that screening all patients, regardless of the reason for their emergency room visit, doubled the number of patients identified as being at risk for suicide. The researchers estimated that suicide risk screening tools could identify more than 3 million additional adults at risk for suicide each year. Also, predicting suicide risk using electronic health records. Researchers from NIM, which is National Institute of Mental Health, okay, if you're as old as I am, or if you loved, I think it was a Disney movie. I don't remember if it was Disney or not. It may not have been. But The Secret of NIM. That was a great cartoon. Anyway, I know I'm all over the place with this, guys. I'm not trying to be. When I get nervous or when I get a little upended by a subject, I tend to squirrel quite a bit. So, but I am trying to circle back and make this make sense. So anyways, researchers from NIM partnered with the VA and others to develop computer programs that could help identify increased suicide risk among veterans receiving VA healthcare. Other healthcare systems are also beginning to use data from electronic health records to help identify people with suicide risk. So I'm also going to talk about veterans later this week. And as I mentioned yesterday, if we run out of time on Thursday, because I don't want it to be so much information that it just kind of throws you, I may break down the chronic pain, CPTSD, and veterans into 3 different days or 2 different days, okay? Because like I said, I would like to keep Friday as Aloha Oracle Friday just to kind of lighten the week, all right? Because this is a very heavy subject. So let's go back over this. People of all genders, ages, and ethnicities can be at risk. Suicidal behavior is complex and there is no single cause. The main risk factors are the following. Now, before I get into what the following are, people are going to sit there and go, why are they saying people of all genders, ages, and ethnicities can be at risk? So in Asia, there is a big stigma still on mental health issues. And, you see it with a lot of these K-pop people that or singers, well, these K-pop artists that are passing away. And I know Cheryl and I talked about one of them. One of them was, I think, one of her favorites, and she was talking, or one of her favorite groups. And his mother really started advocating because it seemed at some point to be kind of just happening. It felt like every other month a K-pop artist was passing away from this horrible, this horrible thing. And I didn't realize until we talked, and then you start doing some research on it for the show and everything, and looking at it, that mental health is still very stigmatized in Asia. And it's funny because especially in places where you think that like the technology is so progressive and just the lifestyle feels so progressive, and yet this simple task that could be fixed early is, I don't want to say task, but this and it's not simple. And when I say simple, I mean it's something that can be that you can start taking care of early, that you can start looking into early, that you can start managing early. And it doesn't take much time, but I think there's just so much stigma. Nobody wants to be that person with that person in their family, right? But I think that's why it can sometimes be difficult. I mean, I'm very grateful that I have a supportive group around me, including family, but they don't always understand what I go through. They don't always understand what people go through with depression, because, for a lot of them that have watched the show, it's been like, whoa. In fact, when I first started talking about my depression, a lot of them, came up to me later or texted me and said, I didn't realize you were going through all that. And it's like, is this new? And it's like, no, I am an award-winning fake it till you make it person. And eventually you stop doing the fake it till you make it. That's where the healing comes in. The healing is a huge part of letting that go, because there's a part of you that says, you know what, I need to honor these feelings. The fake it till you make it, sometimes, there's still those moments where you have to, maybe there's a function you have to go to or an event you have to go to. May not be your best day, but it might be something that's, super high on your list of things you don't want to miss. So you fake it till you make it. And if that is the case for some people out there, when you go home, take care of yourselves, all right? Journal it out, honor your feelings, feel your feelings, all right? Feel your feelings and then heal them. So, and I put it in the other book, but it's like, you gotta feel them, feel them, honor them, heal them, release them. I think that was the order that I said that, it feels kind of proper to do, right? Feel them, honor them, heal them, and then release them. So, because you don't want to hold on to that. And a lot of times, in my perspective, I think that some of these risk factors are based in an area where people are just pushing it down, pushing it up, pushing it down. Whether it's abuse of some sort, it's bullying, it's harassment, maybe you are already struggling, and sometimes, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but sometimes the media tends to glorify, when somebody does lose their life to this, and everyone's just so sad, and when you don't have a lot or you're really focused on something, it can feel like losing a loved one. I mean, case in point, James Earl Jones passed away yesterday, and he passed away probably from natural causes. I don't know, but he was older and a legend. But you can feel the ripples, right? Now, imagine if it's someone much younger who takes their own life, and it's kind of like, whoa, and that can send people spiraling. They may already be on the edge. So again, remember, this is my perspective. I am not a mental health professional. I am not, these are just my experiences. These are the things I've been through. I wouldn't be talking about this if I didn't have depression and I hadn't been, on the precipice of this particular act. And so it's just, these are things that roll through my head and I wonder about. So, feel free to draw your own conclusions. If it resonates with you, then, hold on to it. You can disagree with me. That's okay. Because again, this is just my perspective. I don't want to say opinion. It's just my perspective, because I am going through all of these things for a reason and just kind of sharing my thoughts on each one. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is that we talked about ethnicities. Now we talk about age, and people say, well, they're so young. You hear about these poor kids that are bullied in school and nobody does anything about it. The parents try to talk to the school, and the school says, well, we suspended the kid, or we'll talk to them. We'll talk to their parents. And then, sometimes a parent doesn't want to acknowledge that their kid could be a bully. And that's understandable, because that's not how you're raising them. But then they go to school and poof, right? Or they may say, well, the other kid just needs to suck it up. So there's all different kinds of parenting that can be, in effect here. So, before we get to that part, let's talk about the poor kid that's being bullied or being harassed. If they're already struggling with something, it could really make it worse. All right. Just a sneak peek into later this week, when I was struggling, with the childhood trauma I went through, I was bullied a lot in school. I was bullied a lot. I was awkward. I wasn't pretty. I was, I wasn't one of the cool people. And there were a lot of mean girls. And sadly, this was a Catholic school, K through 8. And there were a couple years in those awkward years, right, where you're growing up. And, they would call me ugly to my face. They would tell me they didn't want to hang out with me. Only the pretty girls can hang out over here. And of course, I'm the only one hanging out by myself. Just my childhood, at school. At home, it was great. With my family, it was great. But at school, it just felt like one big awkward whatever for a couple of years. And, I don't know why people are like that. I don't know why people feel like they need to be that way. But I was already going through a lot of stuff. But I think what saved me was the relationship I had with my parents at home, because I'd go home and it was like everything was better. But I think that's one of the reasons why I hated school. But, after those people eventually left the school, and, it felt like it got better, and I kind of grew into who I was. So, but there were those years, and they stick with you. They stick with you for a long time. So, when you're a kid and you get bullied, especially now, right? I mean, I had a safe space at home. Kids don't really have that nowadays, because there's texting, there's social media, there's all these different things. I think last year when I talked about suicide prevention, I talked about how there was a good percentage of children, or kids, I should say, children to teens, on social media that, were either suicidal, had attempted, or had, unfortunately succeeded in the act. And I think it was like a quarter of them. So yeah, so Eileen said some kids can be so mean, but it makes you wonder what their home life is like. This is true. Home life can be a factor, and I'm going to say that with the bullies, because there's also these kids that grow up that thinking they are just the shit because they're spoiled, they just treat other people. So you wonder what their parents treat other people like, but as Eileen said, you do wonder what their home life is like. And like I said earlier, there could be a lot of different contributing factors. I mean, you could have a completely normal family, but maybe the kid is, we'll go with this, the standard, right? Middle child. Maybe the kid's a middle child, doesn't feel seen. Or maybe he's the older child, doesn't feel seen. Or maybe they're the baby and they're tired of being the baby. And so, that might even be the factor, to get attention, or to say, hey, you know what? I'm the baby of the family, but, but I'm going to bully someone else because, I'm tired of being babied. I want to show that I'm tough. Or the older child, well, I have siblings and my parents seem to have forgotten that I exist because they think that I can handle things on my own. And so I need to go out and get attention. Or the middle child, who always feels like, well, I'm the middle child. And the funny thing is, I know so many successful middle children that I don't realize that the middle child often struggles, right? I mean, what was it with Jan Brady? Marsha. So she was the typical middle child. And yet the funny thing is, when you look at Peter from the Brady Bunch, he seemed normal for the most part. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to go live my life. So, it's hard to say. It's hard to say, but that is true with what Eileen said. We cannot forget that there could be contributing factors at home that might be leading to someone being a bully. So, and I'm not a parent. So if you're a parent watching this, please comment. If somebody came to you and said, hey, we're suspending your kid because they've been picking on this other kid and now it's just escalated, what would you do? Obviously you're going to talk to your kid. And what's going to roll through your mind? Are you going to say, well, I don't understand why this is happening? Because like I said, it's not always the parents. Sometimes the kid might just be acting out for a reason, or, maybe they're being bullied by somebody else, or they're picking on somebody else. You come home, you're outside playing, maybe you got the neighborhood bullying him. And so they go and bully somebody else. But whatever the case is, I'm just curious what other people would think. I do have a family member, and I didn't ask for permission to share this, but I do have a family member, and there were some issues with bullying. The person in question was being bullied, and so this became a bit of an issue, and it affected the person very physically. So, we just got to be careful, and we got to keep our minds open to all this. And like I said, I'm not a parent, so it's hard for me to speak to that part of it. But again, when it comes to ages, anything is possible. All right. Just watch your children, see how they're acting. If they feel like they're kind of becoming awkward, and and I don't mean awkward like your awkward years, but I mean just kind of like suddenly they're quiet, or suddenly they're just watch their behavior changes, because a lot of times that can be something. All right. So yeah. And then genders. Let's talk about genders. All right. Men struggle with the idea, and not all men, sometimes women do as well. But I have found in my own research that men seem to struggle more with acknowledging their mental health than women do. And maybe not personally or privately, but outwardly, or I know people, there are people I know, well, I don't need any help. I'm fine. I can handle it. I'll just push it down. And what do I always say about when you push things down, right? It's like a toaster. It's like a volcano or a toaster, but technically it's like a toaster. That's my new one. Okay, that's going to be my new metaphor, or whatever you want to call it. You push a toaster down, eventually that toast is coming back up. And it's going to come up and it's going to be cooked or it's going to be burnt, depending on what you have it set on and whatnot. So, a lot of times it could just come up into tears. A lot of times it could come up and just be where you're verbally spewing at other people. You have no idea why. And you're just venting everything out that you've pushed down and held in. There is no shame. I mean, there's a big movement at the moment of memes that I keep seeing. And it's talking about men and mental health. There is no shame in getting professional help. There is no shame in admitting that you have mental health issues. We all know every gender has it. Okay? It doesn't matter how you identify. If you have depression, you have depression. And if it's situational, which is what I call it, I call situational stuff when you lose a person or whatever, then there's chemical imbalances, which a lot of people try to say is not a real thing, but it is. Think about anybody that you may have known that have had, struggled with substance abuse. A lot of times when they sober up, there is a chemical imbalance within their body. For me, I have a chemical imbalance in my body, but I think, I was researching something, and after somebody I know had heart surgery, and I was like, that's interesting. Or somebody else I know that was going through chemo, and I'm all, that is interesting, because they were on antidepressants, but they didn't realize that they were antidepressants because the doctor didn't, I don't know if they were using it for something else, but I wonder sometimes if the chemical imbalance comes from that, because you are kind of, playing with, the body. Right? You're not, it's something you're fixing. It's something that so everything's going to work a little bit differently. But whether you have a chemical imbalance or not, whether people think it's a real thing or not, that's your choice. I know that can be a factor for a lot of people. It was very hard for me to be open about my depression and to acknowledge the fact that, I am on, a pill. I still can't remember the other one. I know one of them was Celexa, but I cannot remember the other one. And no, this is not a paid advertisement. I don't get paid for any of this. I'm just telling you what I use because my body's crazy. When I say crazy, I mean even birth control pills, I can't use those. I have to go another route because they make me, even the lowest dose makes me nuts. So there's something that happens to us inside that our body just rejects. But a lot of times mentally we'll reject these things because we don't want to be stigmatized. We don't want people to think we're not tough. We don't want people to think we're not strong, right? But being physically strong and being mentally strong are two different things. They are two very different things. And sometimes the weight you are carrying, mentally can be more than your bench pressing. So if you're bench pressing a lot mentally, you need to get help. There's no shame in it. And nowadays they make it so easy. You can do it in the privacy and comfort of your own home, on your computer or on your phone. So they're coming up with these things that make it easier for people to reach out. So if they don't want to share or they're not ready to, not everyone's going to be open and talk about it like I do. I talk about it because, I want people to get help. I'm not saying you have to blast your personal life on the internet. I open myself to sharing because I want to help people. And even if that's that one person that hides in the corner that doesn't want anyone to know that they're in therapy, that's okay. They don't need to know. All right. But as long as you're getting help, as long as you're taking care of yourself, and as long as you're healing whatever pain is inside, that's what's important. All right. So I'm sorry, I keep adjusting my glasses because this light is shining right in my face. And I'm not normally looking at the computer, although I will be tomorrow. So let's see. The factors for suicide are depression, other mental disorders, or substance abuse disorder. We just kind of talked about that. Chronic pain. I'm going to talk about chronic pain either Thursday or Monday. All right. But just as kind of a preview, sibling has CRPS, formerly known as RSD. Now, I think RSD has been given has been reused as a label towards something else. So I think, chronic regional pain syndrome has taken over as the new term for reflex sympathetic dystrophy. But it is known as the suicide disease. Now, there are a few diseases I looked up. When I looked up suicide disease, actually a few things came up. But CRPS in the chronic pain family is known as the suicide disease. And chronic pain in general. I don't want to minimize anybody who has chronic pain that is not CRPS, because CRPS is, like I said yesterday, it's kind of the Mac Daddy of the chronic pain. Not the greatest thing, but definitely the pounder. But fibromyalgia is a huge one, and that seems to be the more common one of chronic pain. And just imagine, you have a tinge of a headache, right? And this is just an example. Now imagine it's in your body, or maybe, in one spot of your body, Now imagine that this happens to you all day long, every day. And that's chronic pain. Can you imagine having a headache all day long, every day? I don't even like having a headache for like an hour. I mean, I literally will go sleep it off. So, or do my best to sleep it off. But imagine having that, and only certain things are able to help you. So, and really not even help you, but just kind of make things a little more bearable for you. So, chronic pain can be a risk factor in suicide. Personal history of suicide attempts. Sibling and I were talking about this yesterday, because I talked about this, and it's one of the things she's a pretty open book, but I always ask her for permission to share things. But we were talking about the 2 times on our way to breakfast yesterday that she attempted suicide. And I know at one point she was getting ready, so I don't think she heard me talking about this part, but I talked about how you're attempting it, and 2 things can happen in my perspective. One of them, and both of these I've read, okay, both of these I've read. One of them is an actual conversation I had with somebody. But a lot of times when people are on that precipice, the moment after it happens, there's regret. Now, I don't know if there's always regret, because there are people who have not survived their attempts. Okay, so there's, but they'll wake up and go, oh, okay, what do I got to do to get better? What do I got to do so this doesn't happen again? But then there's the flip side. And this is what Sibling and I talked about. And I remember the first time she told me that she had attempted suicide. And this is before I found out she'd done it, tried it twice. She said, the worst feeling in the world was waking up and thinking, God, I can't even do that right. I failed at this too. And I don't think that people who, now this is just my perspective, right? I don't think people who attempt or even have, where it kind of sticks. All right. I'm trying to pick my words carefully here, because I don't want to trigger anyone, and it's a bit complicated, because people, when people say they committed suicide, they're all, well, that's not what we talked about, because it's like committing murder. And it's like, well, but these are the terms that we grew up with. So taking your own life. There are people who have taken their own life, and it was irreversible. But there were also people that, who survive it, and then they feel like they failed. And this is where I think the personal history of suicide attempts might come from. If things don't get better from there, it's very possible that they're going to keep trying until they succeed. Now, I don't know what goes on in the minds of these people. I recently wrote a very cathartic story, and it talks about all the different outcomes of this. And I don't want people to judge. One of the things we need to remove during Suicide Prevention Month, and basically something that should be every day. I mean, this should be a daily occurrence. The risk factors, the warning signs. This is just the month where it's really highlighted that people can be educated, and enough stuff comes out that people start thinking, well, maybe I should Google this and find out. But I don't want people to call these people who do this selfish for whatever reason, whether it's maybe they're running from something, maybe they've hurt people. I mean, when to me, I have to be honest with you, okay? I'm going to struggle with this part, because when people hurt other people and then they hurt themselves, that drives me nuts. And this is going to sound completely cold and completely callous, but it's like, you know what? Why are you going to do this? And when you've already intended on hurting yourself, it's like, just leave them be. Get help. Get help. This is why it's so important to focus in on our mental health, because there's so many things that can be, prevented if we acknowledge the pain that other people are feeling, if we acknowledge this. And that doesn't mean we have to like them, because a lot of times people just make dumb mistakes and then they try to take what people call the easy way out. But the problem with taking the easy way out for some people, where it says right here, right? It says legal troubles or financial difficulties. Now, if it's the legal troubles, a lot of people say, well, they're taking the easy way out. Now, the thing is, they may have mental health issues, or they're just afraid of what's going to happen. But the problem is, it kind of stigmatizes everybody else. So when, I had a friend who passed away from, she took her own life, and that upended a lot of us, that affected a lot of us. And I'm not sure that any of us saw that coming. I was the last person to talk to her in the office, and I felt, we all had this, I wish I would have known, maybe I could have done something. I'm not sure anybody could do anything. It's a very personal choice. It's a very personal choice. And we can beat ourselves up, left, right, and center. But this is why we advocate. This is why we try to get the information out. This is why we try to show people and tell people, hey, you know what? I know you're hurting. I see you're hurting. What can I do? And sometimes they just need someone to listen. But if we end the stigma of this, of mental health, period, across the board, and get people the help they need, we may be able to save lives. Getting in touch with my mental health saved my life. And I'm not lying when I say that. I'm not kidding. I talked about it yesterday with all the times I came this close, this close. And then some divine intervention stepped in for me. And you don't have to believe in divine intervention. You could say, well, Shyla Marie, that's dumb. But something definitely happened to you to stop you. Whatever it was, whether they think it's a subconscious thing, whether they think it's a conscious thing, whether they think it's divine intervention, something happened in these moments that prevented me from taking the next step. That kind of shook me out of whatever it was I was thinking, or whatever it was I was going through. So, we have to pay attention. Now I'm not saying if someone's having a blue day, just suddenly, I can't remember what they call it. There's a term to have somebody committed for like 3 days. God, I can't think of the term. All these things are just skipping my mind. But, it doesn't mean do that. Just talk to people, be involved, especially if it's your own people. If you see someone that's sad sitting on the bench, you never know. You might be saving somebody's life. Just say, hey, how you doing? How's it going? Or just even saying hello, acknowledging someone, and a simple hello can literally change a life. I know that seems ridiculous. I know that seems very minimal, but it can. So also we have family history of mental disorder or substance abuse. That can be, mental disorder can be hereditary. A family history of suicide. That's what I forgot to talk about yesterday. So I was talking about little bits with my mom and my mental health, and how I think it scared her when she found out I had depression and that I'd been diagnosed and that I was taking an antidepressant, because there was a family member of hers when she was, I think, a teenager or so, who took his own life. It was a love issue, but I told my mom, I said it was a lot more than that. I said that was this, that's what tipped his scale. The love issue that tipped the scale. I said there was something more happening there. But so even as a teenager, I knew there was something not right. And I think maybe subconsciously I knew that there was something not right with me, like depression wise. But, again, depending on how you're raised, it's up to you to take, control of your own mental health. You can't always trust that everybody around you is going to understand that. And don't be angry at them if they don't. A lot of times it's fear-based that they don't want to understand. Because, growing up, right? I mean, talking about mental health is really relatively new. All right. When I was growing up, when my parents were growing up, you did not talk about it. You didn't talk about it. And then when people did, it's like, well, they're brave. They're brave. No, they're taking care of business. But that's what we were taught. We were taught to push things down, deal with it, suck it up, and just move on. And I think that's why a lot of people are so damaged, because they don't, they shove it down, and physically it manifests in different ways. So, because it's stress. It's stress. It's stress on your body, holding in secrets, holding in all this pain, holding in all this anger, whatever it is. It can manifest physically because of the tension, because of the stress. It can mess with your heart. It can mess with your blood pressure. It can do all these things. Now, imagine you get help, and then you look, and some people will get help, and, maybe they'll lose weight or whatever, and, like their doctor told them to. And they'll think, oh, well, you know what? My health problems had nothing to do with my mental health. But that's okay, as long as they're better. But I'm telling you, it manifests physically. I have seen it happen. I have lived through it. Okay? I have lived through it. So, there's that. And then exposure to family violence, including physical or sexual abuse, that can cause some mental health issues. And sometimes it might feel like the escape. And presence of guns or other firearms in the home. You know what? I don't mind. I think we should have, this is just my personal opinion, I think we should have stricter gun laws. I don't think the world needs assault rifles that are like it's, maybe the military and the police, yeah. But I personally, and some of my family members don't understand this, but I personally do not want a gun in my house. And if there is one, it's got to be in a locked thing that only sibling can get into. I would like to learn how to use one, just because I think it's important to know how to use every kind of weapon out there. But for me, I'm not sure how I'd feel about it now, because I am in a very different place mentally. But before, I wasn't. And the one thing I was afraid of is not hurting anybody else, but hurting myself. And so that's one of the reasons I can't have a firearm in my house, just because of my own mental health issues. And so it's more of a safeguard, more of a precaution. I don't care if people have guns. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm like I said, I want stricter gun laws. I'm not trying to make this political, but I think with all the school shootings we have and everybody always blaming mental health for it, it's like, if you're going to blame the mental health for it, get the people help before this shit happens. Okay, don't wait for it to happen and then blame mental health. Get them help, because a lot of the people that you hear about, they'll leave these things behind. Oh, they were grieving, or they were bullied, or people were mean to them, or they had a horrible home life, and all these weapons are just available to people. It cannot be that way. There was one school shooting last week where the kid, I don't know if he was bullied or not, but the year before he was 13 and put on the FBI watch list because he threatened to shoot up his school. Then in the interim, to get him out of the house, his father thought it'd be a good idea to buy him an AR, an automatic assault rifle, or automatic rifle assault rifle, whatever it is. But, and he shot up his school. Now they're both under arrest. But he was hoping that getting him outdoors would be helpful. You do not put a weapon in the hands of a person that clearly has mental health issues. Don't just get him out of the house, get him mental health. Help. Get him help. It's not always about getting the kid outside. Sometimes it's about getting them the help they need, because there may be something more going on in there. And it may not even be from bullying. Mental health issues are all over the board. Okay? I mean, some people may just, it may just be in their DNA. It may be in their family history. So we got to watch these things. And I do apologize for making that political. That was not my intention. But again, if you're going to blame mental health for a tragedy, you've got to figure out how to take care of the mental health so it does not become a tragedy. Don't just blame things on mental health, because that's another reason why things get so stigmatized and people do not get the help they need. Because of that, because of the reason that people are saying, oh, well, they just need to get outside. So we need to be better. We need to do better. Then there's also people having recently been released from prison or jail. So, what do you call it? So having been released from prison or jail, I can see that. Now I'm going to use a very weird comparison. I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption. So spoiler alert, but this movie is over 30 years old. So if you have not seen it yet, I apologize for spoiling it for you. But there was an older inmate who had been in jail for basically almost his entire life. He was in jail like probably 3/4 of his life. He was someone important. He was an educated man in the prison system. But then he got paroled. And he was trying really hard to not get paroled. He wanted to stay. But they can't keep you for no reason, right? So they let him out. And he ended up taking his own life because he couldn't adjust. He couldn't adjust. He struggled. And a lot of people do. You do the research on it. A lot of people struggle trying to stay on the up and up. A lot of people won't give them a chance. Or they feel there's just so much that wasn't taken care of mentally and personally that it kind of manifests itself again, and there's no trust. So they start pushing people away. So, it's a very fine line to walk. But when you're strong and when you're able to, show this person that they are worthy, that they are loved, that you can be trusted, it can help change them. So, let's not stigmatize anybody. Let's not stigmatize those people when they're coming out of prison or they're coming out of jail, they're coming out of this, and they want to do better. A lot of them, maybe not all of them. I don't know. I can't speak to that because there's going to be a lot of people saying, yeah, well, why do they keep ending up back there? I don't know. But there are a lot of people who want to do better and be better. And the only way they can do that is with understanding. All right. So, I hope this made sense, guys. I am really sorry for kind of tripping all over that perspective. This subject, as I mentioned yesterday, is very hard. And I mentioned that I'm going to squirrel a lot. I'm going to get very random sometimes. I might get a little passionate about certain things like I did just now. But it's a very hard subject because no matter how much we pretend to know about it, and no matter how much we think we know about it, we're never going to know anything about what that person's going through unless they speak to us, unless they talk to us, unless they share with us. Some people, I think, might just be tired. You have the type of suicide that is where they choose it because maybe they're dying. Maybe they have a physical illness. We have a law now in California that I believe started in Oregon. It's the right to die law. And, it was kind of what Dr. Kevorkian did. Everybody gave this man a hard time, but he wasn't just out there killing people. He was giving people this option. He put the button in their hand, and the reason he put the button in their hand is because if they chose not to do it, they didn't have to, but it was their choice. But he gave them this dignity that they were looking for. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I'm not saying it's wrong. If somebody is struggling with a very, very, very tough medical issue, then the reason this became a law here is there was a girl who ended up having to claim residency in Portland. Right after she was married, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And unfortunately, it was an inoperable brain tumor. And even more unfortunately, it was terminal. And she didn't want to go through her life through all this pain because she was already in so much pain. And when she had exhausted all of her options of potentially getting better and found out that this is not something that's going to ever change, she moved and she chose her path. And there's a difference with that. So I don't want people to say, oh, well, what about this? That's different. That's different to me because you were choosing something. Now, granted, in suicide itself, you were choosing to take, your life or to attempt taking your life. But that's a mental health issue. When we separate it from terminal illnesses and we separate that from the mental health aspect, when it's a mental health issue, we can save these lives. We can save these lives. You know, even if there's 5 people and you're only able to save 4, it's okay. Even if there's 5 people and you're only able to save 1, it's okay. Because you saved somebody, and that person may turn around and save others. They may save a ton more because they've been there. You know, I speak from a place of ideation and attempts only. You know, but I've never really gone through with my attempts because, again, something happened and it just kind of took my thought and snapped me back. And what happens if we can do that for other people? What happens if we can, you know, bring joy to other people and show them, hey, it gets better. I know it's really dark right now. I feel like you're at the bottom of the well and there's no way out, but take my hand and, you know, we'll do this together. We'll figure it out. Okay, we'll figure it out. All right, so I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you, Aileen, for watching. I do hope that a lot of this made sense, guys. I know it can be a bit of an awkward conversation to talk about this, and I apologize if I did not do it any justice, but I'm doing my best. I'm really, really doing my best, okay? So have a great day, everybody. I'll see you back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. Anybody can watch. Please, please, please take care of yourselves, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.